Hey everyone, this is David. I know you're used to hearing me jump into lesson plans and share what I'm doing right now in my classroom, but this week I wanted to try something different. I'm pulling an episode out of the podcast archives to share an interview I did in 2018. That spring, I interviewed 10 different people to ask them about their experiences with Orff Schulwerk and to help get a better perspective of what Orff Schulwerk is, what it isn't, pedagogy, teaching ideas, what you can expect should you decide to do Orff Levels training, why you should visit a local Orff chapter, and lots more. These interviews were so fun and fascinating, and I wanted to share them again with y'all. Thanks so much for listening. Here's the show. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 23 of Make Moments Matter, a music education podcast where I share lesson ideas, songs, games, and inspiring things for your elementary music classroom. My name is David Rao, and I am the music teacher who blogs at makemomentsmatter.org. You can also find my ideas on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, Twitter, and a variety of other platforms when you search my name or Make Moments Matter. Normally on this podcast, I spend the episode sharing teaching tips, lesson ideas, tricks for classroom management, and a whole host of other topics. But for the next few weeks, I'll be doing something a little different. In these coming episodes, I'm taking some time away from the normal routine to conduct a series of interviews with music teachers from around the country. I want to take a little time to really think and talk about Orff Schulwerk, what it is, what it isn't, pedagogy, teaching ideas, what you can expect should you decide to do training or join a local Orff chapter, and more. I feel like so many teachers have what feels like a second-hand understanding of what Orff Schulwerk is, and I want people to have a better idea of how they can implement Orff into their teaching lives. Throughout the next few podcasts, I'll be talking with leaders in the world of Orff Schulwerk and people who have lived with this teaching approach for a while. We'll be talking about the ins and outs of the teaching approach, how to really utilize those pitched percussion instruments that are so often associated with Orff Schulwerk, ideas about teaching recorder, movement, resources, and a whole lot more. On this first in a series of conversations, I'm sitting down to talk with Tiffany English. Tiffany English is the music specialist at Sugar Hill Elementary School in Gwinnett County, Georgia. She holds multiple degrees from the University of Georgia and Piedmont College. Her education also includes post-Level 3 Orff Schulwerk teacher education and Level 1 Kodai training. Tiffany has served the American Orff Schulwerk Association, also known as AOSA, as Region 4 representative on the National Board of Trustees, chair of the Professional Development Committee, president of the Atlanta Area Orff Chapter, and co-chair for the 2014 AOSA Professional Development Conference in Nashville, Tennessee. She has also served on the AOSA Executive Committee as vice president from 2015 to 2017, and she currently serves as the president of the American Orff Schulwerk Association. Tiffany is a fantastic teacher, and as you can tell from her bio, she has a lot to share about the inner workings of Orff Schulwerk. Before I get to my interview with Tiffany, I wanted to share one quick Orff resource that has really changed my personal and professional life, and that is the local Orff chapter. You see, Orff Schulwerk is an approach. It's a way to teach music to children, and this whole movement centers around basically the work of Carl Orff and Gunhild Kateman years and years ago. They built the theory and the pedagogy that we all use, but their legacy lives on in the teachers across the world who use their approach to teach children. All around the United States, local groups of teachers get together throughout the year to share ideas, learn from presenters, and network together. Each local chapter is a community of teachers who help one another grow personally and professionally. All those local chapters and individual members come together to form the network of educators that we call the American Orff Schulwerk Association. But it's truly at the local level that we thrive. I was first introduced to Orff Schulwerk when I went to a workshop at a local Orff chapter. And at that workshop, I got a ton of great lesson plans and ideas that helped me make it through my first year of teaching. But more than that, I met people who would encourage me to grow and become a better teacher. They would check in on me and offer guidance and resources to become better. And at that very first meeting, I was given a mentor and resources and phone numbers and email addresses of people who offered to help out however they could. I mean, they didn't even know me, and they wanted to help me. There are local chapters all throughout the United States. So how do you find a chapter that's close to you? Well, that's easy. First, you go to the website for the American Orff Schulwerk Association. Again, that's often just abbreviated to AOSA. And their website is aosa.org. If you go underneath the top header, there are a bunch of little drop-down menus. And you can find under About, you can find local chapters. Under Professional Development, you can find local chapter workshops. Under Get Involved, you can find local chapter workshops. And even down on this main page, there's a little box that says Find a Chapter Workshop Near You. It's in all of those different places because we really do value local chapters, and we really do want people to, join their local area and find teachers near them who work together and who believe in this approach and who want to work together to get better at being a teacher. So let's say you live in Michigan and you want to find if there's a local chapter near you. Well, when you go to the local chapters and workshops page, there's a Google map that pulls up that has all of the Orff chapters from around the country sort of pinned. And so you could zoom in to your state to find if there's one close to you, which is great. And underneath that map, there's also just a list of all the different chapters with links to each one. And you can search by state. It's actually alphabetized by state. So the listing starts with Alabama and then goes on to Alaska and Arizona and so on. So you could scroll down through to find if there's a chapter near you. But on the map, what's really cool, as I said before, let's say I'm in Michigan, and I wanted to find if there's a local chapter. Well, if you zoom in on the map, you'll find that there are 3 chapters in Michigan alone. There's the West Michigan Orff chapter, which is sort of the Kalamazoo, Battle Creek, Grand Rapids area. There's the Mid-Michigan Orff Schulwerk Association, which is sort of the Lansing and Flint and upper part of the state. And then there's the Greater Detroit Orff chapter, which, of course, because of the name, encompasses Greater Detroit and Ann Arbor. And the other cool thing is that if you go on the map, let's say you're like, well, I'm sort of on the southern end of the state. Should I go to Detroit or should I go to somewhere else? If you look, you might find that actually you're closer to a chapter that's across state lines. Right across the state line is the Northwest Ohio Orff chapter, which meets in Toledo. So if you utilize this map, you might find one that's close to you, and you can then follow the links and see, what presenters they have in that year. You can go to their local website to find out more about, who these people are. You might find there are members you already know. And so this web page is a great place for you to find that local chapter and figure out how you can get involved. So go to aosa.org and use one of those many links to find the local chapters page and to find out what's near to you. Because the best way to really understand what Orff Schulwerk is and figure out if it's right for you and for your classroom is to go to a workshop at a local chapter and meet the people who use the Orff approach day in and day out. Have conversations, learn about resources, listen to the presenter, enjoy coffee together, get to know other people, and whether or not you buy into the Orff approach or not, you'll make some great friends and discover new ways to teach that you might not have known about before. I am so happy to welcome Tiffany English to the podcast. Tiffany is not only a teacher who has used the Orff Schulwerk approach for many years, she has taken all her Orff levels, is the director of a levels course here in Metro Atlanta. She has been involved with the Atlanta Orff Schulwerk chapter, and she is the current president of our national organization, the American Orff Schulwerk Association. Tiffany is very involved with the Orff world and is a great person to give us some perspective and thoughts on the Orff Schulwerk approach. Tiffany English, thank you so much for talking with me today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, before we get too far into the conversation, could you just take a second to tell listeners a little bit more about yourself? Where do you teach, your grades? I think it'd be interesting for them to know how often you see your students, and just for fun, maybe something fun or interesting about where you live.
Okay, well, I teach in the northeastern corridor outside of Metro Atlanta in Georgia. I teach in Gwinnett County, Georgia, and I have been teaching for 23 years, so I've been doing this for quite some time. But I teach kindergarten through fifth grade, so and I'm the only music teacher in my school. I have 1,200 kids, and I see them. My fourth graders are on a 7-day rotation, and my first, second, third, and fifth graders are on an 8-day rotation.
I don't know how you remember that.
Yeah, it's a little bit of you got to think about that one a little bit.
I
have
like super color code everything.
I have this whole chart system that hangs on my wall, so I know who's coming and when. But it's fun. That way, at least if we have a school holiday or whatnot, I don't miss the kids. They still get to come, which is good. Let's see, what else? You asked me about my...
Something cool about where you live, or something you like about where you live.
Okay. What I love about my area, particularly the county that I teach in, is that it's very art supportive. We have an amazing fine arts director in Gwinnett County who anything we ever ask, can we have this training? What about these instruments? Can we have this clinician come in? He always says, well, let me see what I can do. And pretty much half an hour later, he says yes. So there's a very cool arts community here in Gwinnett. I don't know. What else do you want to know?
And Gwinnett is... one of the things when I moved to Atlanta is that I thought school districts are different. How big is Gwinnett County School District?
Gwinnett is ginormous, if that's a word.
Yes.
It's one of the largest districts, if not the largest district in Georgia. We have over 120,000 students, which is a country, basically.
Yeah.
If you think about it, my little school is not little, it's a city. We joke about it, that we have all these little villagers running around our school. So it's a lot of interesting people in our district because it's very diverse. Gwinnett is one of the largest growing counties in the state of Georgia. So you will find all kinds of cultures here, lots of diversity, lots of languages, which makes it really fun to teach in because you're always learning new songs and new games and new dances from the families that are in your school. So it's a good place to be.
Yeah, it's cool that you can learn those things from your village.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, I've had several new families in the past month that have come in. One in particular from Puerto Rico, and the mom, when she came through the school, I met her and she taught me a little game that her kids knew. So that was fun because then I could use that in my room the first day this kid came, and it was really fun.
Oh, that's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you are obviously involved in your school community. How did you become a part of the Orff community, or what drew you to Orff Schulwerk?
Well, I think my story might be similar to many other people's in that I at first thought I would be a middle school band director. And I know a lot of people are coming out of performance-based programs thinking they will be orchestral directors, choral directors, band directors, whatnot. And I had that similar thought. I did my student teaching in middle school band. And when I graduated, I was looking for jobs, and there were no middle school band jobs available close to where I lived. And so I was poor, as many people are graduating from college. So I started interviewing with elementary positions and was hired, and pretty soon discovered I had no idea what to do, which is where Orff Schulwerk saved my life. I went to a workshop that a teacher in Gwinnett at the time taught, Pat Painter, who was a precious person. She was teaching it, and it was like I was hit by lightning. It's like, that's it. That's what I want to do. That's fantastic. How do I learn more about that? And ever since then, that's just been something that is so important to me, to figure out how to teach children with this active music making approach. It's just beautiful in the classroom. And I can't thank Pat enough for introducing me to it.
It's so fun. All the people I talk to, it's never, that question never gets an answer of, well, I saw it in a textbook. Or, it's always a human connection or a workshop connection, and you're sort of drawn into really the community.
It's absolutely community based. I can't tell you how generous the Orff Schulwerk community is. I can't think of one Orff teacher who is not generous with their lesson plans, their materials, their ideas, their strategies. It's just a really beautiful community to share ideas, because we all are concerned about children and their music making and their love for music. And that's very clear whenever you talk to other Orff teachers. They're very interested in that, that kids have that opportunity.
Well, if you were to talk to someone who doesn't know anything about Orff Schulwerk, could you give a quick 2-minute, description of the Orff Schulwerk approach?
For people who haven't found out about Orff or haven't seen it in action, to me, the best way to explain it is to have people think back to how they learned language. In that, if you think about how babies learn, they play with sounds, they figure out which sounds have meaning, they start putting those sounds together, they explore those sounds, experiment with them, and pretty soon they pop out with words. Orff teachers do that in the beginning of music making. We give the kids lots of experiences to play with sounds and explore with things and build vocabulary. And then the next step, just like kids, is they learn how to put ideas together. And that's where imitation comes in. We teach kids how to put things together in a way that makes sense. We give them a model, much as parents do, and they teach their children to speak or to form ideas. Once kids can form complete sentences, just like kids in our music class can form musical ideas, then we start discussing how to read them. And we teach kids how to write things down. And that's what happens in an Orff class, because you will always have Orff teachers who start with sound first, and then we move to symbol. It's just like kids learn to read and write. It's the same way. They learn to speak first. Kids learn to sing and to make music and to move and to play long before they're reading symphonies and scores with all these notes.
And I love that you were sort of highlighting the exploration at the beginning stages, because if they are encouraged with that at an early age, even when they are able to write things down or, give things a formal name, they're so much more open to exploring different avenues or possibilities.
Absolutely. One thing I love about Orff Schulwerk, and you just spoke to that, is the creative side of it. That exploration and that play with sound really opens up a whole avenue for kids to have a comfort with creation and with improvisation. And that's so important, that kids can express their ideas, they can be confident in their ideas, and they can communicate their ideas. Think about how valuable that is in a society where you have people who can explain their thinking and can work with others to combine their thinking with others' ideas. Orff Schulwerk teaches kids how to do that in a beautiful way. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah. Well, are there any common misconceptions about Orff Schulwerk or levels training or another aspect of Orff that you'd like to address?
Let's all say it together. Orff is not instruments. And I say that jokingly because, that's the most familiar thing that people know about Orff Schulwerk is
the Orff instruments. Yeah.
The glockenspiels, the xylophones, metallophones. They're very visual, and they're also very distinctive in their sound. And so people are quite familiar with that. And so they equate Orff instruments with the Orff approach. And those are two very different things. An Orff teacher can be an Orff teacher all day long and not have one instrument in the room, because it's how you approach your teaching and how you break things down into elemental bits for children, and how you encourage the kids to create and to improvise. So I guess that's my number one thing that people frequently have misconceptions about about the Orff approach. As far as training, I think people sometimes don't realize how unbelievably valuable it is because Orff training is intense. It's 2 weeks, it's 60 hours. Oh my God, there's homework. Who knew I'd have to do homework? But once people get in the middle of it, I always tell people it's a Krispy Kreme donut. And if you're from the South, you know how awesome that is. Once they've had a donut, a Krispy Kreme, you got to have more. And it's just like that. Once you have your level 1, you got to have level 2. And, ooh, there's more. There's like chocolate on top. We have to have level 3. It's once you experience it, you will never regret that you've taken an Orff training class. You will never regret it. And it is a big sacrifice. I know people have families. It might be a financial sacrifice. But if you think about your professional career and what you're giving to your children at school every day, it's very worth it. And there's so many avenues out there to help with the financial end of it if you look for them. It can be done. But I do encourage people, if you're new to Orff and you really haven't had too much experience with it, attend local workshops, observe in Orff classrooms. That is a huge thing to do. Go find Orff teachers and go watch them in action. And if it's something that piques your interest, find a levels course. The AOSA site explains levels courses all over the country, just like you can find your local chapter right there on that website, aosa.org. There's so much information right there waiting for you.
Well, this is sort of a great segue because my next question sort of goes into what we've already been talking about. I think that often when talking about, Orff, that teachers jump into thinking about movement or recorders or the pitched instruments. But I'd love to talk a minute about lesson planning and scaffolding. I'm a pedagogy nerd, I will admit. And I like thinking about process. So would you just talk us through how you might set up a lesson or steps to get to an end product?
That's a great question because you are absolutely right. I think a lot of people, when they start working in Orffland, as I call it, there's so many possibilities. And sometimes that's the hard thing, is that eternal question, what else can we do? Can sometimes get you in trouble. So when I'm planning a lesson, I always think about the end first. What do I want the kids to be able to do, and what do I want them to experience? And then I work my way backwards. And one thing that people sometimes overlook that I think is extremely valuable is transitions, and how do you get them from one maybe location in the room, maybe an instrument, maybe you're moving them from pitched instruments to your movement space or whatever it happens to be, or maybe you're having manipulatives that you want them to work with or whatnot. Your transitions have to make sense because Orff Schulwerk is so creative and can be so open-ended. If you're not really concrete in your classroom management and in your actual logistical transitional planning, it can blow up in your face in a lot of ways because the kids, they create and it's messy. So I start from the end and then I kind of work my way back to the beginning and figure out where it is that it makes sense for them to start. For example, I'm working with So-Me Do songs in second grade. Well, at the end of this lesson, I want them to be able to create their own So-Me Do patterns. Well, they can't do that if they haven't really internalized those patterns. So we start with lots of echo singing, lots of imitation. I make up this whole story about this princess, and she's, her magic word is So-Me Do. And whenever she sings this dragon appears, and ooh, there's a bass xylophone, and then it brings in all these things. And by the time they're at the end of the lesson, they've had all of these exploratory activities, and they're able to come out with the melodies that they need to come out with. You can't just suddenly say, oh, boys and girls, we're going to make So-Me Do songs. Go.
Right.
It's very intricate.
It's like the teachers who say, I'm going to put on music, just dance. But if you don't give them a framework of like how to dance, different things you can do, it's creativity within a framework that really makes the approach work.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of people have the fallacy that Orff teachers are just, being the leaf and the leaf falls off the tree and oh, now we're trees and leaves. Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. But inside your head as the Orff teacher, you have to have a very clear, as you say, framework. And you have to know exactly what is yes and what is no in your lesson. And that can be tricky because you want to give enough choice to the children that they can be creative, but at the same time, you have to scaffold them enough so they're successful. Because honestly, there's nothing worse than at the end of a lesson, I didn't give them enough information and enough framework, and it just falls on its face. And that is not what you want for kids, because then they don't have that musical satisfaction.
Right, exactly. Well, one of the big topics in education these days is student creation and student choice, like we've just been talking about. What are some ways that you give students choice in your lessons?
That's a great question, and one that I think Orff Schulwerk magically answers, because that's the whole idea of the Schulwerk, is that the students have a voice and that they have a choice. It could be something as simple as they're choosing the rhythm they're playing. It could be something as simple as they choose the instrument to transfer their rhythm or their melody to, or whatever. A lot of times it's topic. I know in my head that I want them working on quarter note, eighth note patterns, but that doesn't mean they can't pick animals or sports teams or candy bars or whatever piques their interest for that particular class. So sometimes I might have a lesson running with my second grade, my 8 second grades, and they're all 8 doing a different topic with the same concept. And I find that gives them a lot of ownership because they've been able to drive the instruction a little bit. And by the way, your administrators love that. They come in and they're like, oh, well, Miss English let me choose blah, blah, blah. This is what we're doing it with it. My principal loves that when she walks in and sees that. So, choosing instruments, sometimes I let them choose their groups, choosing the topic of what we're doing. Sometimes I'll let them choose, do you guys want to choreograph this piece or do you want to move to this piece? And I'll let them vote. Sometimes it's the pitches they're using. If we're working on recorder, if you're feeling good today, you can use the whole pentaton. If you're not feeling so hot, then maybe pick, GAB. Those kind of choices are good too, because then you can really differentiate with your kids and allow them where their comfort level is. And then you as the teacher, you can stretch them a little bit. I see you're able to play that GAB pretty great. I think it's time for you to add low E. And they're like, what? Oh, I could do it. It's a great balance because you give them the ability to tell you where they are. And then you as the teacher get to push them a little bit so you can grow them some.
Yeah. And again, I keep hearing you say basically like you're giving students a choice within a framework of things that they're going to be successful with. You've already, talked about BAG or the pentaton. You've already given them those ideas, but you're letting them choose.
Yeah. Orff teaching is really intelligent. And I don't mean to say that other ways of teaching are not. That is not my point. What I'm saying is it takes a lot of thought and it takes a lot of effort. Because you have to think about your kids. You have to know your kids. And for some people, that can be a little overwhelming because they do have to have a lot of information about their children. And to me, that's the fun part, getting to know what your kids know and what their comfort level is, and then taking them from that point and moving them to where you can get them a little bit further in their musical development. But it is a framework. It is not a, hey, you guys go like play the xylophone or something.
Yeah. Here, take these mallets and just do whatever. Yeah,
just figure something out. It'll be all good. That is not Orff Schulwerk. It's very purposeful. And I think that's an important word that sometimes people overlook, that it's really, really purposeful with how you're choosing to plan your lesson, the materials you pick, the structure you put in place with your process. You have to have purpose for everything.
Yeah. Well, when you become a part of a new community or try a new experience, it's often those first steps that are the most intimidating. And, the first time you go to a gym or the first time at a new job, and there are sometimes things that feel a little scary. If you think of the Schulwerk, were there any scary parts, something that maybe you had not tackled before you went through training? What were those roadblocks? Why did they intimidate you? And now that you've had training, what are a few ways that you might scaffold your instruction so that students are successful?
That's a really good question, because I think a lot of people have the experience of going to an Orff workshop or a conference session or something like that, and you see it work beautifully and it's fabulous and the angels are singing and the heavens are opening, and you get back to your room and you try this and it's just awful.
Yes.
I hope I'm not the only person that's ever happened to. And I think when you first begin your journey, the scary part is the unknown part. One thing that I think that some people, and I struggled with this, so I'm assuming that more than just me struggled with this, is that giving up of the control.
Right.
I'm a very type A person. Like, I have spreadsheets and they're all color coded, and I have to-do lists and check marks and Google Calendar, you name it. And so for me, giving up that control to the kids, where I'm more a facilitator rather than the teacher-centered, I say this, you do this kind of thing, was really scary. And it took me several years before I had that comfort level. And I think people need to know that's okay. You're not going to suddenly flip the switch and your Orff teaching is going to be perfect. Honestly, that's the really cool thing about the Orff Schulwerk approach, is that it's always open to improvement and always open to progression. I think that's really cool. So I think people just, relax a little bit. Don't beat yourself up if things don't go well. Analyze it. Think about it. Reflect on it. Talk with other Orff practitioners. Find out what it is that works for them, and then try it. We all have a different teaching style. And I think that's something that we have to recognize as well. Good process is good process, but we all have different personalities. And so you have to find out what works for you, and don't beat yourself up about it. I've had so many student teachers over the years, and I had one this year who was fabulous. And there was one day where the lesson was just, no. I'm teaching it, and I'm like in my head going, oh my God, this is awful, and she's seeing this be awful, and and after the lesson was over, we sat and talked about it, and she kind of smiled at me. She's like, you're not happy, are you? And I said, no, I'm not happy, and this is why. I did this, and the kids did this, and the reason the kids did this is that I did not teach it properly. And even after 23 years, it happens. But what's cool about it is, now that I have my training, I can look at what happened, and I can usually figure out the holes, what I did wrong. Not to beat myself up. That's not the point. The point is to improve. And I think that's important for teachers to understand, is that that's going to happen and it's okay.
Yeah. Well, and this is sort of a side topic, but, I totally resonate with you of being a planner and a more type A person. And when I would go to Orff workshops, I was like, maybe when I take levels training, I'll just turn into this like hippie, nothing bothers me, but like there is a place in the community for those of us who like, that organization and that structure. And like, does that make sense at all?
Yes, absolutely. And I think I'm laughing because, Orff teachers have this reputation of that, I don't know, wear sandals and take our shoes off.
Yes. I was just thinking we take our shoes off all the time.
Take our shoes off, which is great. I think that's funny. But I think it's also important to point out that there is a place for everybody in our community. And I love that those of us who are type A and like complete control freaks have a place in here, because Orff Schulwerk really, honestly, you kind of have to in some ways be a control freak, because you have to have that plan before you start. Even Orff teachers who say, oh, well, I'm going to develop the whole lesson. The kids are going to walk in the room and I'm going to ask them what color they want to learn about today. Well, even if it's that open-ended, in your head as a music educator and an Orff teacher, you've already thought about how you want to get them to the end, even if you haven't created this beautiful bulleted color-coded spreadsheet for it.
Right.
You already know it, and I think that it's just how you express that.
Yeah.
It's the difference.
There's a place for everyone at the table,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's something that's very important. I hope people know that, in AOSA, there's so many chapters and so many people. You can find connections even if you live, in the middle of nowhere. There's, with our technology these days, and AOSA's digital mentorship program, and all those kinds of things, there's always a way to make a connection.
Yeah. Well, and that leads to my next sort of thought or question. I know a lot of folks who are now a part of the Orff Schulwerk community got our start with local workshops and then levels training, but I think we're all aware that those opportunities mean that you have to take time away from family, either on a Saturday morning for workshops or a couple weeks in the summer for levels training. And there's also a monetary component that school districts don't always pay for. So considering all that, what are your encouragements for taking levels training or going to a workshop? Why should teachers out there who are listening to this podcast invest the time and money into those workshops or levels training experiences?
I will tell you, and I'm saying this with all seriousness and all honesty, if I had not found Orff Schulwerk, and if I had not been trained and found mentors, I would no longer be teaching. I can say that with 100% certainty. I would have quit this job a long time ago. That's the power of the Schulwerk. If you are a teacher who is struggling, you're having a really hard time reaching your kids, maybe you are not quite sure how to implement teaching in your room, you're having a hard time with classroom management, you're having a hard time with student buy-in, or whatever it happens to be, I can promise you that it's worth it. I don't know what else I would be doing, because now that I love teaching and love Orff Schulwerk so much, I can't imagine doing anything else. But I can tell you right now, if I hadn't found this, I would not be a teacher.
Yeah. And I know that you're not the only person who would say that, because I've heard a lot of other people echo that same sentiment, that this was the thing that made everything sort of fall into place and make sense.
And that, teaching is hard, and it's getting harder all the time. And if you can find something that supports you, and you can find a community like we have in Orff Schulwerk that supports you, and you can find strategies and materials and all of those kinds of things that work, why would you not grab it with both hands? There's a lot of ways to get there, whether it's, writing grants or saving your Christmas money from your grandma, or I don't know, I'm being stupid now, but there's
No.
lots of ways that, you can do it. It might take you, 5 years to save up or whatever it happens to be, but hey, become an AOSA member and apply for scholarships. There's money out there. It may not be there in 5 minutes. You might have to do a couple things to get there, but it's there.
So, Tiffany, I know you are the president of the American Orff Schulwerk Association, so you clearly believe in the organization. But for someone out there who maybe just goes to workshops every once in a while or is not as involved, why do you think that, what are the benefits to becoming a national member or a local member? Why should people consider that?
Well, there's a couple of different things to think about. First of all is the tangible, hands-on kind of benefit. Things like scholarships, grants, the digital mentorship program, which is fabulous, by the way. This is where we connect young teachers with seasoned veteran mentor or Schulwerk teachers. And I'm talking about creme de la creme or teachers, where we connect you digitally with a mentor that can really help you hone your craft. That is a incredible opportunity for AOSA members.
We have free for members, right?
It's free. Yes, it's so fabulous. I can't tell you how many wonderful reviews we've had from people mentors and mentees about this program. It is something that I wish I'd had when I was a young teacher. It would have just been so fabulous, and it's free for members. Also free for members, we have a huge video library that is just chock full of, it could be conference sessions, interviews, all kinds of things of master teachers. And you can search it. Hey, I need a session on assessment because my principal says, hey, you need 3 more hours of PD before I can sign off on your teacher evaluation. Right. Well, for AOSA members, it's free. Get in there and dig around and you'll find some great videos. We have lots of resources on the member side. There's lesson plans. There's a whole wonderful page on diversity because a lot of people are confused about how to teach music and dance from cultures that are not their own. And the diversity committee has done a fantastic job of explaining how to do that and giving some supports and giving lesson plans and videos and that kind of thing on the member side. We've just started our first professional learning network, which is kind of like a webinar in a way. And we'll be talking about Elementaria, which is Gunnar Kateman's book. If you're not familiar, it's a basically how to.
It's fabulous.
Yeah, it's awesome. So we'll be having that happening in March and April and May, which is free for members. So there's so many things that I think people just may not be aware of, which can really help you on the local school level. Like we had a meeting yesterday at my school talking about the teacher evaluation system. And one of the big things was that we have to have PD hours. Well, for music teachers, professional development hours really don't happen at your local school. So how do you get those if you can't go to workshops?
Right.
Let's say you've got family happening or whatever it is. Well, if you're an AOSA member, get on the website, watch some videos, and there you go. Or do the professional learning network with Elementaria. You know, there's a lot of things happening there.
And I love hearing you say that, who you teach in a ginormous school district with a fine arts coordinator. And, you know, like if anybody is going to have the access to the, you know, music PD, it would probably be you. And so if people who are out in the middle and they're the only school in their district, you know, this is a wealth of resources that you can have at your fingertips if you need it.
Yeah, it really, really is. And once you log in, it's almost like Orff Pinterest. I always say Pinterest is like a black hole, you know, you'd start digging around in there and like 3 hours later, oh, wow, 3 hours went by. The AOSA site is kind of like that once you get involved in there, and there's just so many things on there. But, you know, if you think about extrinsic rewards and, you know, benefits, there's so many benefits to this network of teachers. Going to conference is a huge benefit of membership. It's definitely not the only one. Sometimes people think that, oh, I'm not going to conference this year, so I won't be a member, which I hope people will kind of get out of that habit now that the website is really rocking and rolling. But that ability to connect with people who are like-minded at conference is a huge thing as well. And I think that network of people is so valuable because as music teachers, most of us are lone rangers in our school. I am. Mm-hmm. You know, I adore my art teacher and I think she's fabulous, but she's not an Orff teacher.
Right.
And it's nice to have people to bounce ideas off of and to talk about things with. And hey, have you taught the song and what was your process? And should I teach the drum part this way or should I teach it that way? You know, that's really important for us, that we get to talk through things and meditate on things in a little bit with other people. And I think that's another benefit of membership that sometimes people overlook. You know, they don't think about that they can reach out to so many people. You know, a lot of us know names. Well, if you look up their name on the member directory on the website, you can email them and say, hey, I bought your book about blah, blah, blah. How would you teach this?
Yeah.
You know, it's a little forward, but most of us in Orffland are really nice, and we would probably like it if somebody asked us questions. So,
and it's like a 6 degrees to Kevin Bacon or whatever that game was. You can, you know, say like, I know you because.
Yeah, it's Carl Orff game. I mean, come on.
Yes.
So yeah, AOSA is fabulous, and it's being involved initially, I was involved on the chapter level and then became more involved in the national level. And I think that happens frequently. And I wish people would realize and that we could do a better job of telling people how wonderful AOSA is. I think it's a really valuable tool for people if they would, if they would use it.
And I'll say too, I'm a part of my state MEA, Music Educators Association, and MEA and NAFME are great organizations, but they service K through 12 and beyond. And Orff Schulwerk is almost exclusively elementary. There are middle school components, and you could use it anywhere, but like going to convention, when you go to your state conventions, there are like 4 or 5 or 6 elementary sessions, but like Orff convention is all the sessions could apply to you, and like all the resources on the website are all devoted to probably what you're dealing with in your classroom.
It is a Mac Daddy conference, people. So fabulous. AOSA is a huge family, and everybody is welcome. And I hope if anybody listening to this has been kind of interested in what's going on, reach out. I am always happy to talk to anyone who wants to talk about AOSA, as you can tell from all the things I've been saying. But it's aosa.org. Look us up. You won't regret it.
Absolutely. Well, Tiffany English, I really want to thank you for taking the time to talk with me about your experience with Orff Schulwerk and sharing some of your expertise and insights. This has been a really wonderful conversation. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. It's been my pleasure.
Tiffany English currently serves as president of the American Orff Schulwerk Association. If you have follow-up questions, you can email her at tiffany@aosa.org. That's all for this episode of the podcast, but check back in the coming weeks for more interviews with Orff specialists from around the country. If you're interested and want to learn more about Orff Schulwerk, check out aosa.org, the webpage for the American Orff Schulwerk Association. My name is David Rao, and you have been listening to Make Moments Matter, a music education podcast.